Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Chris, and this is my channel, We Love Comics. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And this video is basically going to be my opinion on things I've seen recently, so you may or may not agree, but that's up to you. Hopefully you will at least respect my opinion, because I actually was not going to make a video today until I saw, number one, the trailer for the new Batwoman TV show, and the rumors that I'm not sure have been confirmed yet about Robert Pattinson supposedly being the frontrunner, if not already selected, as the new Batman. I'm a little disappointed at what's going on with DC right now, and the reason being is they started getting themselves on the right path, with Wonder Woman doing very well, without having to bash men to do it, with Aquaman being a pretty good movie. I mean, these were not anywhere near Endgame level, but they were definitely, they were watchable. They were not something that I have anything really bad to say about them. And with the Shazam movie being, again, it's predictable, but still an entertaining movie, it was good. I thought DC finally started getting things in the right direction. Now, you know, full disclosure, I am mostly a Marvel fan, but I am a comic book fan, which means I don't have a problem with DC. I mean, one of my favorite movies, comic book-wise, is The Dark Knight. I want DC to succeed as much as Marvel, because if all of these production companies, and that includes Image and any other companies that are doing TV shows or movies, if they're successful, it keeps our industry alive and healthy. So I don't want to see anybody fail. But I have a problem with what's going on here. Now, again, I'm just going to state my opinion. You may disagree, and that's perfectly fine. But I watched the trailer, the new CW Batwoman trailer. Now, I was, just like Captain Marvel, I was excited about this show. I was looking forward to it. But then they had to go and ruin it by basically insulting men to show female empowerment. Now, here's the thing. I do not have a problem with female characters. One of my favorite movies of all time is the second Alien film, Aliens. Now, that stars Sigourney Weaver. Now, she was a very strong, powerful woman. Movie was amazing, and they didn't have to insult men to do it. Now, 2 lines. Now, I'm not going to show any clips or anything because I don't want to be flagged or anything, because you know how YouTube can be, especially with us smaller channels who can't really defend ourselves like, you know, some of the larger channels can, because I can't afford to hire a lawyer and things like that. But 2 lines, if you haven't seen this trailer, that bothered me. One is when the main character discovers the Batcave, because they start out by saying that Batman has deserted Gotham. So the man character decided he's not going to help anymore. They don't specify why, they just basically say, oh, Batman has deserted us. So she ends up ultimately in this trailer, finds the Batcave, and sees the Batman suit. And I guess a person that's supposed to be working for Bruce Wayne, you know, she says to this gentleman, you know, need you to alter the suit. And he's like, well, the suit is pure perfection. And she goes and says, it will be when it's made for a woman. So that right there, that's the first little cringe. Then the second one was near the end of the trailer, where she says, I'm not going to let a man get a credit for what a woman does. Now, all I want to say is, just put that in another shoe. Just imagine a movie, and please tell me if you've ever seen a movie, and I said this even to my wife, please show me a movie where you see a man talking about, let's say, some kind of powerful suit, and says, well, it'll be perfect when it's made for a man. Now, I wouldn't want to see a guy do that either, so it does go both ways. You do not have to insult a gender to rise another gender. That is not how it's done. And I want to show you something. I'm going to put on my window capture, so bear with me for a second. And of course, this video is not going to get a lot of views because I'm not telling people what comics to buy. So most people are just not going to be interested in this. And that's a shame, because this is part of the situations that directly involve comic books. And I wish more people would watch it, but right now only 7 people are watching it. If this was a video about me telling you what comic books to buy, there would be a lot more people. So it's a little disappointing, but that's okay. There's more to this. I want you to see this. This is my analytics, and I'm going to go back to the beginning of this channel, all the way back to January of 2018. So this is the analytics of who watches my channel. The blue is male. The green, or olive green, or whatever you want to call it, is female. So you can see 0.4%, 0.2%, 0.5%, 0.3%, 0.1%, and 0%. So about 1% of my channel viewed is female. What these companies do not seem to understand, or just don't care about, is the fact that the majority, now I'm not saying everyone, because there are plenty of women that like comics. I'm not going to sit here and say they aren't. But the majority of people that buy comics, that watch the comic book movies, lean more towards men. It is unwise for a business, first of all, to insult any customer, but to insult what is the majority of your customer is not a smart business decision. Now, if you know anything about this Batwoman, this new Batwoman that they're doing, she's a lesbian. I don't know if she's bisexual or a lesbian. I have no problem with somebody's sexual preference. Whatever you do behind closed doors is your own business. It is not mine. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant to what you have the right to do. But what does somebody's sexual preference have to do with a character? And again, I will do this in both situations. I don't care about a character's sexual preference. For example, the movie The Watchmen, when you see a man and a woman that are the superheroes of the movie going up into a spaceship and having this cringy, awkward sex scene, I didn't want to see that. It's because it has nothing to do with the story. It does not progress the story in any way. And yet, for some reason, they seem to want to keep cramming down what is political agendas. And it's hurting the industry. Yes, you're going to get a couple of SJW brownie points from people, but like I said to my wife, and I'll say it to most, on, again, average, how many women do you know in your life that care about comic book movies, who care about and buy comic books? And again, I will stress this. I understand there are plenty of women that buy comics, that like comics, and enjoy comic book movies. But they are not the majority. And these companies are constantly insulting the majority of customers. Again, you shouldn't be insulting anyone. If you're a business, it's rather foolish to make part of your customer base, even if it's the minority, feel that they are not welcome. And that TV show has made me go from, oh, I'm interested in seeing where this goes, to now I no longer want to see it. Because I, as a man, why would I want to watch a show that, as you could see in the trailer, it's 90% characters are all women, they're all can do no wrong, which is fine, but then they have to add the insulting of men. Oh, the suit is not perfect until it's made for a woman, and I'm not going to let a man do credit for a woman's job. Again, just imagine if a man said that in a movie. First of all, there is no movie or TV show where you'll ever find in the history of movies where a man says, and Comic Head 84 quotes it. He says, quote, "Don't want a man taking credit for a woman's work." And then proceeds to take a man's name, costume, weapons, and benefit from his reputation. Exactly. Again, if you want a woman to be shown as empowered, you don't have to insult men to do it. Like I said, Ripley is the perfect example of aliens. She didn't have to make the men look like idiots. They all worked together. She was a strong character. She was even a badass. I love that movie. There are plenty of movies that do it right. You don't lift somebody up by pushing somebody down. And this SJW movement of quote-unquote inclusion is supposed to be, when you are supposed to be inclusive, it's supposed to be all, not those that are on your side. Because if you are upset with somebody that puts you down, and that's perfectly fine, if you all of a sudden become the powerful person and you decide to put somebody else down because now you're in their shoes, how are you any better? And I see this all the time. You do not put people down to raise them up. So, to me, I'm extremely disappointed in CW and in DC in general for what they're doing. And a lot of things that you're seeing with commercials and different corporations. Again, I don't have a problem with women being powerful, but why do you have to insult men who are the majority of your customers? And I will continue to stress this. I know women buy comic books. I know women like the comic book movies. But if you look at the average person, when I go to a comic book store, every time there's guys. The only time I see a girl in the store, on average, is when they're with their boyfriend or their husband. That's not being sexist if I point out the truth. And SJ says he loves hot lesbians. That's wonderful that you love hot lesbians. Congratulations on that. But what does that have to do with the story? I don't want to see Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Spider-Man having sex scenes with puppies or children or men or women, because it has nothing to do with what the characters are supposed to be. If you want to watch that stuff, go rent a porn. To me, it is irrelevant to what superheroes are supposed to be. Notice how amazing Endgame was. How many sex scenes were in there? I mean, the closest thing they came to is at the very end of the movie, and they've lifted the spoiler thing. So if you don't want to know, if you haven't seen it by now, I mean, that's your thing. But if you don't want to hear this quick little spoiler at the end, just shut it off for a second. But the closest thing you even see to a sex scene in Endgame is when Captain America and Agent Carter are dancing at the end of the movie, and he kisses her. To me, that's perfectly fine. But that's not the narrative of the story. So that's my opinion, first of all, on the CW's Batwoman. Unfortunately, this is going to make a lot of people not watch, and I give this maybe 2 or 3 seasons, because of course they'll put money in it and make it seem like it's popular, just like they did with Captain and Marvel. If you actually read some of the stuff, Disney put lots of money in ticket sales to make the numbers look higher than they actually were. So they have the money to do that. I'm sure DC is going to do that so they can save face. But after 3 seasons of putting money into something that's ultimately, in my opinion, is going to fail, I don't see this show going more than 3 seasons. And that's only because they're going to make it go into further seasons when people don't want it. There's going to be people that like it. And if you like it, that is perfectly fine. But the SJW stuff has got to stop, because you cannot insult your customer base, regardless of how much of a percentage there is. But again, if you see on average, throughout history of comics, it has been more men that have purchased comic books on average than women. That's not being insulting to women by giving actual facts. If you didn't see it, rewind this later. I show my entire run here over almost 2 years now being on this channel again. 99% of the people who view my channel are men. 1% is women, and one of them is my wife. So that's almost a default. So let's get on to the next part of what DC is doing right now. If you see the image to your right, you will see the image of Twilight's own Robert Pattinson. Now, I don't know if he's actually been confirmed, but they're at least saying that he is the frontrunner of the new Batman. And you can call it body shaming or whatever you want, but look at this character and you tell me that person looks like a superhero. Do you know how many years of steroid use he would need to get into shape to look like a actual comic book hero? And I'm sorry, but he does not seem like an actual superhero character. Now, there are certain roles that can be played by certain people. This is not insulting anyone. Not everybody's going to fit a part. I seriously doubt Danny DeVito is going to become the next Superman. That doesn't mean he's a bad person or a bad human being. He just doesn't fit the role. If you look at this individual, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. What I'm saying is he does not fit the role of what they are trying to get him to be. And as you can see, this is more of a, and I'm just saying this, you could take it whatever way you want, more of a feminine kind of male than a masculine type of alpha superhero male. So again, it's another one of those agendas where they're trying to take what is supposed to be the manly man, the superhero, the ones that are the muscular, strong people, and turning it into someone who looks a little bit more on the feminine side. And again, I'm not trying to be insulting. Compare him to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Which one do you think would be more the superhero figure? Now, I'm talking Arnold Schwarzenegger of 30 years ago, not of now. But this is a direction that is going to turn away a lot of people. See, here's the thing. Most people are afraid to speak the truth. So most people will pander and say, oh, it's okay, and they'll justify it and everything like that. And that's what keeps these things not only going, but getting worse. I'm not afraid to share my opinion. Now, you notice I don't have to make others feel bad. Because like I said, I don't have a problem with women empowerment. You don't have to bash men to do it. And my superheroes, if you look at like Conan and you look at Superman and Batman, they are very strong people. Robert Pattinson, if you look at his arms, does not look like he could bench more than 125 pounds. That is not a superhero. That is not what Batman is all about. Because of his tragedy, he dedicated his life to becoming basically stronger than most bodybuilders and weightlifters. He trained in martial arts. He was very dedicated. You look at the comics, he's very buff and bulked. This is not a representation of what Batman should be. And again, I'm not insulting the actor. I'm just saying that is not the right role for this actor. And if they ultimately hire him as the new Batman, in my opinion, and I'm not telling you what to do, I won't watch it. I will not support it. Because when you give a company your money, they don't care if you complain. They don't care if they argue. They don't care if you make a YouTube video like this. They only go by, wow, we made all of this money. They must like it. Let's keep doing it because we like that money. And even Marvel is starting to scare me in the potential direction that they may be heading. And I hope they decide against what some of the rumors might be. Because I, as an older comic fan who grew up loving Superman and Batman, and even never had a problem with Batgirl, am getting tired of all of these shows and all these commercials and all these programs and everything where they have to feel like, especially if you are a white male, you're evil. I, as a consumer, am not going to support that. And Alex Comic Quarter says, here's the deal, we all hated Affleck, and then he killed it. I didn't have a problem with Ben Affleck. I remember him playing the part of Daredevil. Most people didn't like that, and yes, that Daredevil movie was kind of corny, but I enjoyed it. But if you notice, look at the size of Ben Affleck as compared to the guy from Twilight. And if you actually notice, there are people on Twitter all now because of this rumor or this confirmation, they are associating this guy with Twilight. It is never going to leave him. That is going to be burned in people's memory. So I know that people were confused about Ben Affleck, but he's not a skinny character. He's not a skinny man. He put himself in shape. He looked very muscular. Now, of course, they can add stuff to the suit, which was what they did, but Ben Affleck has played superheroes before. This is just too much of a more feminine character that is a purpose of trying to demasculate men. Now, I could absolutely be wrong. I could be overboard, but that's the beautiful thing about my opinion. My opinion is never wrong to me because that's what it is, just like your opinion is never wrong because you have the right to an opinion. It does not mean you have to agree with me. But as you can see how I predict with comics a lot of times, and I tend to be right more than I'm wrong, I don't see the future headed in the positive right direction for what is the majority of the consumer base. And if you are willing to settle and justify just because you want something, I would rather have quality over quantity. Be very careful about what you give your money to. And if you justify things that you don't really agree with, then you're not standing your ground. I mean, in the grand schemes of things, this is just comic books. I understand that. But there's more to it when you have to insult a specific gender, race, or anything. Because like I said, I don't care. I don't want to see a man and a woman having sex in a comic book story. I don't really care about the love interest part. That doesn't interest me in comic books. If I wanted that, I would watch a drama or get some romance novels. To me, a comic book is a hero confronting a villain and trying to see which one wins in the battle. It's not about who they have sex with. So I don't care if a character is lesbian or bisexual or gay or what have you. It has nothing to do with the story of what a superhero is about. And that is nothing more than political agenda to get people used to things that some people may not agree with. Do you want to subject your children to that? Now, of course, you have the right to. And you may disagree with my thought process. I would hope you don't hate somebody for having the right to their opinion. Because I can respect you saying, Chris, you're 100% wrong in your eyes. You have the right to have that opinion. I just feel like DC was starting to get on the right track. And this, to me, is not a step forward. This is a step backward. I don't know what to say about this. It's disappointing. I, as a white male, am offended by how they have to insult us just to lift somebody else up. It is clear agenda. Many people agree, but many people will be afraid to say anything. Because most people, if you, God forbid, share your opinion on a social network, you'll be ganged up on. Since when is having the right to an opinion a bad thing? If you disagree with it, make a counterpoint. Don't try and stifle somebody's rights to have an opinion. That's what's causing shows and movies and things like this to keep occurring. Two wrongs do not make a right. And I do not want to live in a country where I'm afraid to speak my mind for fear of prosecution. That is not freedom. So there's a lot more at stake with these kind of things than just a DC character. And I hope people will look at it from a deeper perspective than just saying, well, I buy a bunch of comic books. I want them to make myself a lot of money. So even though I don't agree with certain agendas, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want it to decrease the value of my comics. That's not integrity. I bought a bunch of the Batwoman comics. I don't care if they go down for moral standards. Be better than that. And again, and Ben says Marvel is going to ruin the X-Men. Well, we don't know. It depends on what they do. If you're going to insult somebody to rise somebody up, you are not doing business correctly. You shouldn't insult any of your customers. Whatever happened to the customer is always right. But to insult what is, on average, the majority of your customers is just plain stupidity to clearly have an agenda. Because they're not focusing on people like me. They're focusing on the younger generation who is going to grow up thinking that these things are okay. And that it's okay to silence people if they have a difference of opinion. It's just, it's disappointing. And again, I was knowing that this isn't going to be a large viewed video because I'm not pointing out what money to make on a comic book. Which shows, again, and I've said it before, whether people want to admit it or not, the majority of people care more about the money they can make on comics than the actual quality of the comics and the movies and the TV shows that are coming out. Most people just don't want to admit the truth. They don't like to hear the truth. And if the truth makes them upset, they would rather not listen to it. And there you go. The 1% of women who watch my videos are here. So, again, just imagine if you saw a TV show or a movie where a man is talking about, let's say, Batgirl suit. And the person says, well, that Batgirl suit is pure perfection. And the man turned around and says, well, it will be when it's made to fit a man. I don't want to hear that either. So no one can accuse me of being sexist. Of course, if you take things out of context or only share a partial part of a conversation, then you can gear anything towards anyone's narrative. That's just dishonest. Please, anyone listening to this, show me a TV show or a movie throughout history where a man said that very same kind of line to insult women. I would have a problem with that if you showed it to me too. So DC, you're headed in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, you're not the first. And unfortunately, you won't be the last. I really fear Phase 4 for Marvel and where they might be headed and what they could do to ruin a good thing. Not many people get the opportunity to get the golden goose. If you are lucky enough to get the golden goose, Marvel, and to a lesser extent DC, they get the bronze goose right about now. You may want to give it a nice house to live in. You may want to protect it. You may want to feed it the best food. You don't want it to die. Because once it's gone, you may not ever get it back. And Marvel and DC are in a time period that they've never seen before and may never see again. And if you want to ruin it for your own personal social justice agendas, you are going to ruin something that could last for a long time for all to enjoy instead of trying to gear it towards some, and it will disappear and probably never come back again. And I've stressed to people that corporations like Marvel, like DC, like all of these companies, they'll tell you everything that you want to hear, but all they care about is money. And why do I say that? Because the people that are representations of corporations are the stockholders that invest in the companies. They don't care about the superheroes like you and I do. They care about the bottom line. Because how many movies have they put out that they talked about how much they loved it, how much they enjoyed it, how much they're looking forward to seeing where it goes, and financially it's not a success, and all of a sudden the franchise disappears? Does that mean they didn't love it as much as they said? Or were they lying to you and trying to convince you to get you to pay money to buy a ticket to see their movie, and when they didn't get the money, they shut it down? They only care about the money. They will tell you, like a politician, all the good things you want to hear. And unfortunately, 90% of the people buy it every time. Brick Hunter says, by the way, Chris, it's not just white males they are offending. Make all colors should be offended. Like I said, I don't want it to be anyone. I'm only saying it from my perspective because I am a white male. I can't speak for an African-American female because I'm not one. Although these days, if I want to identify as one, I guess I could. So I can only talk from my perspective. Anything else is just guessing. So I understand everybody. Two wrongs don't make a right. If people want to just sugarcoat these things or look the other way just because they can make money on comic books, you're setting a very low standard for teaching our children what's right and what's wrong. And that's a dangerous world to live in. So, again, I've seen so many strong female movies in my past. I mean, look at Princess Leia. Until they ruined her in The Force Awakens and turned her into Mary Poppins. In Star Wars, she was a tough female. I didn't have a problem with her. There's plenty of females. And even, like, for example, to a lesser extent, Black Panther. Do people seem to forget Blade? They seem to think that Blade was... Black Panther was the first movie with African-American superheroes. Blade, I loved it. Second movie was decent. Third movie was, one of those typical, we made enough money, let's do another one, and not actually care about story. But Blade was a great character, and guess what? It was an African-American lead. Which also, by the way, was one of the first R-rated superhero movies. Not Deadpool. I mean, just because something hasn't happened in a couple years doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's embarrassing that, and again, as you see, I have lots of valuable comics, but my integrity means more to me than their value. So I'm not afraid to stand here and talk about what is right in my opinion, even if it's at the cost of the value of my comics. Because then you're just allowing people to continually do the wrong thing. And if you think it's going to get better... I mean, that's why, like, people used to say, it's like, oh, why do you always used to confront your haters? Because to me, if you let a bully do things to bully you, and you let them get away with it, do you think most bullies would be like, oh, they're not saying anything back, I guess I should stop because it's morally wrong? Or do you think they'll say, wow, I'm going to keep doing stuff because they're too afraid to say or do anything? When you don't confront a bully, the bully tends to just continue to be a bully and gets worse. Your priorities should not be giving up your integrity and your principles and your beliefs for profit. And I see that all over YouTube. People that are so dishonest and deceiving just to get views, just to make money. I refuse to do that, and it's probably why I don't have 100,000 followers. Or I don't have $100,000 either, I wish, but... if that's what it took to get it, I wouldn't do it. So we'll see where this goes. I don't see this TV show lasting more than 3 seasons. If this person is portrayed as Batman, I'm sure he'll do a decent job. I'm not saying he's a bad actor, but to me, looking at that individual, he's not a superhero. Superheroes are supposed to be larger than life. Like the Chris Hemsworths in the world. That, to me, is the perfect example of what a comic book hero should look like. Robert Pattinson does not fit the role. It does not mean that he is a bad actor. I mean, they always want to talk about inclusion and everything. Show me a movie where somebody like Danny DeVito... he's the lead character that has a romantic love interest. Where they don't make him to be the goofy, overweight joke character that's usually on the sideline to get laughs. Where's that character's lead role? Why isn't that making billions of dollars? Because people will say, oh, inclusion, and oh, this and that. And then if you do a movie like that and nobody watches it, the proof is in the pudding. Like they say, actions speak louder than words. So I'm sure there are going to be people that disagree with what I'm saying, and that's perfectly fine. You have that right. But if you want to insult because I have the right to an opinion, just because you don't agree, is not the way this country should work. Debate should be allowing each person to have their own point of view without the need to insult. So I don't have a problem with this actor or actresses on a personal level. They don't write the scripts. And of course, if I was asked to be given the role of Batman, who would be crazy enough to turn it down? But I would be the first to admit that I would not be the person that should be a Batman character. So I don't blame the actors. I blame the writers, the creators, the people that allow these things to happen. She's just playing a role. So even though she said things that I, as a white male, or just even a regular male, was offended by, she was just reading a script. So I don't fault her. So that's my opinion. I want to thank the 31 people that watched this. Whether you agree with it or not, I appreciate the fact that you respect my ability to have my opinion. I would love to hear yours. The one thing I will tell you is, if you are going to have to insult to share your opinion, your comments will never see the light of day. If you want to disagree, you have the right. Just do it in an adult way where there's a dialogue where people can learn from it. I just do not think this is the right direction. And I have telepathy says, remember Michael Keaton. Now, I know exactly what you mean by that, because Michael Keaton wasn't a big, strong character either. But remember, that's in the beginning of the comic books where nobody took them seriously back then. Before that Batman series, the last superhero movie was Superman. So it was decades. So that was in the early stages. That's why you saw the first X-Men. They were afraid to put them in their original costumes and gave them all black costumes, because no one really knew if it would even take off at that point. So it's a little different because that was the beginning. And even then, I remember when they hired Michael Keaton to be Batman, everybody thought it was a joke. And of course, that's before the internet. But again, that's a different time. Nobody took comic book movies as even something to even pay attention to back then. And even like Superman, they made him look strong. Now, obviously, Christopher Reeve wasn't taking steroids to get overly buffed, but he was working out trying to get it to look like a Superman character. But if you also know Superman, he doesn't have to be looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. His strength doesn't come from his muscles. It comes from the fact of coming from a different planet and our sun giving him his power. That's different. Batman is supposed to be a character that, because of his tragedy, dedicated his life to becoming beyond human. This character right here, Daniel Patterson, Robert Patterson, does not give that impression. That impression looks like he was sad that his parents died and decided to become a new wave artist singer. And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Whether you agree with it or not, I'll leave it up to you. I want to thank you all for at least giving me the opportunity to listen to my opinion. I would love to hear yours. Again, you don't have, if you're going to be insulting and attacking just to make a point, your comments will not be shown. So just learn a better way to do it. And I will have more videos telling you what comics to buy, so we'll get more people to view that. Those of you who are here, if you appreciate these kind of things where I'm not afraid to speak my mind, more people need to do that. If you would care, be so kind enough to give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it. If you disagree, please let me know why. And hit subscribe if you haven't, because you may not always agree with what I say. You may not even like what I say. But at least you know that I'm going to speak my truth and not just pander to an audience just for the sake of making an extra $1 or $2 on my comic books. To me, it's just not worth it for me. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And don't forget, it's not you, it's not I, it's We Love Comics. And today's surprise subscriber shout-out will be Jeremy Peerboom. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day.